Sanibonani Dumilang, molweni Mzansi Afrika apho ekhaya, and welcome to your #1 youth show. This is Expressions, right here on SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Ndimloke ukholosa kalubisi, the brightest star in the galaxy, unonkanyezi. Hi Gembukeli, South Africa is caught up in the global Ozempic craze, originally approved for type 2 diabetes. The injection is now being also used as a quick weight loss solution, Mbukeli, by non-diabetic persons, especially among young people and influencers. Umbuzo wena Azaria ochochentla esiubuza yena babukeli, is it really authorized for weight loss? Ingaba luthini uluvo lwakho Mbukeli, qiniseke into yokubana uyaxhumana nathi. I'm not doing this alone, I'm with Azaria Khoza.
Unjani Madlongothi?
Ndiyaphila Nkosi, unjani wena?
Ngiyaphila Madlongothi, and I guess ukuthi angeke sikubalekele njengabantu abasha balapha eSouth Africa ukuthi we all want to look beautiful.
Exactly.
But at what cost?
Is it worth the risk?
Let's find out. Ake Mbukeli ngikubingelele lapho ekhaya, mina igama lami ngo-Azaria wakwaKhoza. Mumva nje ezinkundleni zokuxhumana Mbukeli kusabalele ama-video kanye nezithombe zabantu abasha abasebenzisa umjovo thizeni owaziwa nge-Ozempic. Lo mjovo Mbukeli kuhloswe ngawo ukusiza labo abaphila nesifo sikashukela. Kodwa ke lately nalabo abanganaso lesifo Mbukeli bayawusebenzisa lo mjovo ukuze behle emzimbeni. Kodwa at what cost Mbukeli? Does it come with any health risks na? Labo phila nalesifo Mbukeli sikashukela bona bazowuthathaphi na umjovo uma unombani ewusebenzisa to lose weight? Ingabe mhlambe kuzohamba isikhathi lo mjovo ube imvela kancane yini, and then we'll see diabetic people suffering to get imijovo. As usual ke Mbukeli, we went to the streets to find out from young people ukuthi bona bathini ngalesi sihloko sethu sanamuhla, and this is what they had to say.
It's not a good thing about taking Ozempics as it's for diabetic people. Now they're going to increase prices, wow, and then it's going to affect those who are in need for actually taking their diabetic medication.
I feel with people taking the drug, Ozempic, it's for people who have diabetes. Not knowing what, yes, you may get your slimness or whatever you want, but as it you get diabetes later on, you're going to become resistant to that medication. Or even if you don't get diabetes, you're going to get health issues or health effects.
If I want something and it smells good like a perfume and I go to TikTok, that's it. There's no information, there's no more information, the wrongs, the rights, the side effects, and there's nothing. It's just a trend, and that's how people are going about these days. Trend, want to fit in, and yeah.
Interesting comments coming from young people on the ground. The South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, SAHPRA ngamafupi, has actually raised a concern on this medication, informing abantu abangaba ayilunganga because of the health implications that can pose. Kodwa ke Mbukeli abantu bayaqhubeka bayisebenzise. Siyaqonda ukubana unyaka seyiqalile and people want to look good and feel good, but at what cost? Is it really worth the risk? To help us unpack this further, in studio, we are joined by Charlotte Meschede, who is a diabetes and dietitian specialist. Welcome to Expressions. Thank you so much for joining us in this very important discussion.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
And I mean, Ozempic has taken South Africa by storm. I mean, word on the street says that, you know, it's the secret to lose all those extra pounds. But the big question is, what are the health risks? And I mean, are young people aware of the health implications that come with consuming this medication? Can you just take us through, you know, if it's really sustainable, especially if we are looking long term?
So sustainability initially is obviously with the cost. First of all, it's a very expensive drug. Depending on the dose, you're looking at between 1,200 and 1,600 Rand a month, sometimes more, even more, 6,000. And it is very, it's not for everybody, put it that way. It's injectable. Side effects include nausea, constipation. You can, you know, you lose your taste for food, and therein lies the problem. Because it does work. It does cause you to lose your appetite. It causes you to not want to eat as often. And with that, the metabolic consequences of that are great, because you become more insulin sensitive, you're less likely to develop type 2 diabetes and so on. But with young people, I think there should be a huge warning.
Yeah.
Because with any quick weight loss solution, one tends to lose a lot of lean body mass. So we're not just talking about muscle mass, which can occur, we're also talking about your bone mass. And in young people who are still growing, they're still developing, especially if they're not paying attention to their diet and lifestyle, then there will be long-term health risks involved with this.
This sounds like a ticking time bomb for young people, considering, some of the negative effects that come with consuming this medication. I mean, you touch on, losing your mass. I mean, it feels like it's eating, your muscles as a young person. And I do want to understand that, looking at the potential risk, long term, it's like a time ticking bomb for young people.
Well, there's certainly always an indication for drugs like this, especially in context of the overweight and obesity in our country. A third of women are normal weight, 2/3 are obese or overweight. So as children growing up, we're now seeing an epidemic of obese children.
Yeah.
So if the situation is such that the child is very obese and tends to and is unable to control their appetite and their lifestyle, then surely an Ozempic or a drug like semaglutide, which is the active ingredient, can help them. But for people who don't have that much weight to lose, then I would urge them to say, let's look at the diet and the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because unless you eat well and unless you live well, you will not sustain this long term. And let's also remember, it's not about the weight loss itself, it's about keeping it off.
Yeah.
A successful weight loss plan is when you've kept that weight off for at least 2 years. So are you going to be injecting yourself every week for 2 years? Are you going to manage that cost?
Yeah, and I mean, you speak about diet and lifestyle, and I mean, if you look on social media, influencers are begging endorsement deals, promoting this Ozempic. I mean, we even have international celebrities like Oprah Winfrey who publicly promoted and endorsed Ozempic. I mean, how do these influencers and trends actually contribute to the growing demand of this medication?
They contribute massively. I mean, think of yourself as a young girl, and young boy for that matter, a teenager who wants to lose weight to improve their image. Something like this just feels so easy, so available, so doable. But the problem is it sustainable?
Yeah.
What are the consequences? And as I said, if you haven't learned the whole diet and lifestyle story, then how can you sustain it long term? Are you going to have significant effects of bone mass loss, let alone muscle mass? And let's remember that when you lose muscle mass, your muscle has much higher metabolic rate than your fat mass. So when you lose muscle mass and you don't exercise, when you stop Ozempic or semaglutide, then you are going to then really compound the problem, because you're not going to be able to sustain that weight loss going forward.
Yeah, and this growing demand, it has raised questions and concerns about the access, to patients who are actually diabetic. I mean, what happens to them now? Obviously, there's going to be price changes because it's in demand. There's obviously the black market also on the pipeline. I mean, how is this growing misuse of Ozempic actually affecting diabetic patients?
It's affecting them hugely, because the availability varies from 1 month to the next. So they never know whether they're going to get it. Fortunately, something like a GLP-1 receptor agonist, which is what Ozempic is, it's not their lifeline. So it's not the mainstream of diabetes care, because you have got other oral medications, and if they're on insulin, it's injectable. So it won't affect them from a life or death situation. However, if they are managing to maintain their blood glucose levels and all the other metabolic markers using Ozempic, managing to keep their weight off, and that's very important for their lifelong or their chronic health issues, then people who don't need it are taking up those supplies.
Yeah, and I mean, it raises questions on the shortages, because if you look at other countries, you know, already there's shortage of Ozempic due to this issue. But the big question continues, Mbukeli. Yes, you want to look good, you want to feel good, you have that body goal set, but is it worth the risk, considering some of the factors that we've talked about kuyo le segment? Kodwa ngoku Mbukeli siyaqhubeka nengxoxo. Make sure that you interact with us on our social media platforms. Uluvo lwakho njengomntu omtsha lubalulekile. For now, Masikwi evenkileni, do not move a muscle. You are watching Expressions.
Siphinde sikwamukele Mbukeli, sabukele Expressions khona la kunqa phambili SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Namhlanje Mbukeli sikhuluma ngezindlela ezahlukahlukene abantu abasha abazisebenzisayo ukuze bazace emzimbeni, and one of them is Ozempic. Ngikhuluma nawe nje Mbukeli, silapha enkabeni yedolobha eRosebank to meet the influential TikTok star uDominic Zaca, who's also been on the Ozempic journey.
Kwakuyisinqumo engasithatha because ngase sengigene a lot of weight and bese ngikwenze konke ngijima ngizama ukudayetha, but okwami bese ku specific because bese ngiqale ne hormone therapy, which is a different journey engikuyona on my own. But over and above that, bese ngidinga ukuluza a weight because my health was being affected now, ngasazi nokuphefumula kahle, ngine BP, nje into kanjalo, and I consulted udokotela wami Dr. Nandi, and she's been very fantastic in terms of saqala a process from senza show ukuthi senza my tests, senza show ukuthi is Ozempic the right option for me, or are there other options, and we did explore amanye ama option are available for me, but sabona ukuthi Ozempic iyona kahle kahle engisebenzela kahle, nokuthi ke ekhaya emndenini vele sinenkinga yashukela, so mangiqala ngisebenzisa umuthi vele o approved for ushukela ngiyasiza mina, and ngiyasiza nokuthi ngingabe sengiba affected at a later stage. I don't think abantu abaningi baya research. I think for example mina mawubuka ithombe zami zakudala, amavidiyo amakudala, uyawubona umehluko ukuthi nginciphile, so uzojabulela lokho ukuthi hey unciphile Dominic, should nami ngizoncipha othi ngiyojova, kanti wena ngeke izikusebenzele Ozempic uzosetshenzelwa yenye into, but because awufuni uku research udokotela uzokunika into oyifunayo at the end of the day. Mawufika ukuthi ufuna Ozempic uzokunika Ozempic oyifunayo, ukuthi wena izokuphatha kanjani usuke ngasekho necessarily, because abanye dokotela may not be like mine where they want to see you regularly to check ama vitals akho nento kanjalo. Ama side effects maningi, and awami bekuyi nausea, definitely uzophathwa nausea ngeke izikiyeke, especially ngosuku ojove ngalo uzwa nje ngathi mangahlu imagine umuntu osuke emithi leyo nausea leyo yona nayo yonke into kunukela kabi, iphathwa nausea and u feeling ngathi ungalala ngathi ungaphumula. I'm very sorry to the community that's affected by us using the medication, but medication is there for us to use. With any medication ngisho ungathatha i-medication yekhanda ngelinye ilanga uyafica khona ngelinye ilanga uyafica yikho, it's access at the end of the day, and nami ngiyisebenzisa for my health benefit. The reason why kune backlash is because odokotela abaningi may not be practicing safety or certain measures to make sure ukuthi there's an ongoing supply that's fair. Khona odokotela mhlawumbe ozo order ama client akhe because they are celebrity clients and they order them in bulk or whatever the case may be. Fortunately mina mine does not do that. Mine ngeke ayikho, mayishilo nje na ukuthi out of stock kumele ngiphilele lo viki or that 2 weeks ayikho. Ngiqala Ozempic bese ngifike 149 kgs mangikhumbula kahle, manje sengiku 119 mangaphosisa. I've lost about 30 kgs in total.
There will be no resistance, but one thing about Ozempic, when you're using it just for weight loss, we recommend a period of 6 to 12 months. You take a break because probably you have reached your desired weight. With Ozempic, I must also specify, because you're losing a lot of weight, exercising is beneficial. Ozempic is a scheduled drug. It's even at a higher schedule than your normal antibiotics. You can't buy antibiotics from the street. You can't buy anti-BP medication from the street. As we say, Ozempic is an anti-diabetic medication, so it's only prescribed, it should only be prescribed by a doctor.
Well, there you have it, Mbukeli. That's all the 411 that you need to know about Ozempic. Ukhumbuleke Mbukeli ukuthi uma uthatha isinqumo sokuthi ufuna ukuzaca emzimbeni nawe, you have to go to the right channels so that ungazitholi ukhahlamezeka ngokwempilo. Okwamanje ake sithi qhu eyitolo. This is Expressions right here on SABC 1.
Welcome back, Mbugeli. You are still tuning into your #1 youth show. This is Expressions right here on SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. And of course, aqhubeka nengxoxo ebaluleke kakhulu kwaye siyathandile ukubana sive nakuwe Mbukeli uthi thatha owakho umbono. In studio, we are still joined by Charlotte Meschede. Welcome back again. We are wrapping the show. We are looking for solutions. We've just watched the insert, and just reflecting on the insert that we just watched, it is clear that, I mean, this Ozempic is not for everyone, and it's not every doctor that can actually exercise, you know, necessary caution. Dominic, who was the case study, actually was informed by the doctor that there's a history of diabetic people in his family, and I mean, does that warrant the doctor to actually prescribe the medication of Ozempic, since there is a history of family members that were actually diabetic, considering that Dominic is not diabetic?
Yes, absolutely. Having a history of diabetes is very significant in prescribing something like Ozempic. But also they need to have the right indications. Are they overweight? Have they tried everything else? Do they know what they're getting into? It's not for everybody, as you said. There are side effects such as nausea and bloating. There are many people who don't do well, and there are many people who take 2 or 3 medications to control the side effects of Ozempic.
So even if they are not diabetic, they can still be prescribed.
So it is a good medication. There's no question. There is a place for it. No, you know, I really have to admit that. But they have to then also manage their diet and their lifestyle as well. Without that, they will never see it long term. They will never see success long term.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned earlier on about, you know, the misinformation that is happening on social media. You know, young people are being bombarded by all this misinformation as to where you can get it. There's black market, you know, opening the door. I do want to understand, I mean, with so much misinformation, how can young people, you know, make sure that they are really aware and they find the right channels to access this medication? Obviously, getting medical supervision.
That's critical. They must go through a medical professional, and they must get ongoing care. It's not enough just to get the medication. They've got to manage the dose. The dose can be titrated up or down depending on how they are doing with the side effects. And they also need to know what they're in for. You know, are you going to be able to inject yourself once a week forever and ever? Are you going to learn anything in this process?
Yeah.
So they really do need to know the pros and cons of taking something like Ozempic.
Yeah, I mean, Charlotte, we cannot ignore the fact that the beauty and the wellness industry, they actually perpetuate this unrealistic beauty standard that you have to be a certain way for you to be accepted by society. How can we actually change this narrative around, you know, body image to ensure that, I mean, no matter the size, be confident, be comfortable, you know, especially with what you said about diet and lifestyle?
Well, I think you've always got to be aware of what you have got. So make the best version of yourself. And that will give you confidence in doing whatever you need to do. This pressure has been on young people forever and anon. I mean, the eating disorders that have come through just with Ozempic alone is enough to make one worry. So as a parent, I would not like my children to go on to Ozempic unless it was medically indicated. That doesn't mean to say that they have to be have diabetes to do so, but they have to have it managed by an endocrinologist particularly.
Yeah, mileage is power. And I mean, from our conversation, you know, it's really true that, you know, these quick fixes actually have negative long-term effects. And I mean, for young people who really want to lose weight, I mean, already now, you know, you've elaborated the risk and implications, you know, from using Ozempic. What are some of the sustainable ways and healthy ways, you know, coming from you, Charlotte, as a dietitian, from today, it's a Monday, as a young person, you know, how do I get in shape, but making sure that it's sustainable and it's also healthy?
I'm so glad you asked that question. First of all, cut out the junk food. You know, if we all just cut out sugar and processed food in our daily food intake, that we would all do so much better. And we won't need metabolic drugs like Ozempic. All right, that's number one. And number two, exercise. And you don't have to join a gym or run comrades. You know, you can exercise 30 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week just to get started and build that up. So
Yeah.
nothing is easy without some effort.
Yeah, and I mean, you also mentioned severe consequences, you know, for diabetic patients. And I mean, my question is, how can they prepare themselves, you know, for possible shortages, considering that now there is a growing demand?
It's very difficult. It's best to get a reliable pharmacy that can always make sure that you are given preference when it comes to the Ozempic, you know, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for sharing your insights. You know, this was quite informative, and yeah, that's how we wrap it off.
That's how we
Azaria.
wrap it up. Mbukeli sethemba ukuthi lapho ekhaya uma nawe ufuna ukwehla emzimbeni, you want to be size 28, you want to have a summer body, make sure that you go through the right channels so that at the end of the day ungakhahlamezi impilo yakho. Uyazi ke Mbukeli ukuthi asikushiyi wedwa. Caterers is standing by ngengoma ethi Swatini ebantwini. Bye bye.